It's official. Tyron Smith is done in his Cowboys career. I think the topic is, did the Cowboys make the right decision in letting him go? I was surprised it was just 2 years and $20 million that got him away from the Cowboys. Surprised they're not even willing to go to $10 million for a great, but I think that defines just how tight they're operating this offseason. What do you think, Chief? Did they make the right decision?
I think they did. I mean, I was surprised to see that the guarantees, you initially get the news and it's Tyron Smith $20 million. You're like, okay, I know they weren't going to pay $20 million, nowhere close. And then you find out, well, it's mostly incentive-based, and it's $6.5 million guaranteed. So they were really hell-bent on making sure Tyron Smith was not going to be back here. And I think they're a little bit late to the party on this. I think we've all been kind of out on the idea of you just can't depend on him, despite that the fact that he's still really, really good when he plays. And he was outstanding last year, especially as a pass protector. But you can't depend on him. And I think it's the right call because when they have him this whole time, they've had him, and like if you didn't know any better, you would think they thought they were going to get 16, 17 games out of him every year. There was no contingency plan. It's just, hey, if he's not there, oh my gosh, here's a Doga, here's Cam Fleming, or whatever disaster guy that they've put out there. I don't think they have the ability to say, okay, we still have Tyron Smith, but we need an insurance policy involved. I don't think they have that ability. They needed to get him out of here and fully address the position with somebody that you can depend on for more than 5-6 games a season, which has been the case for the most part outside of this last year. And I think this last year, him playing 13 games is the outlier. I think the Jets would be throwing a party at the end of the year if they get 13 games out of him.
I think it's best case scenario.
Do you feel like, though, that they might have found something but too late by not practicing, or was that just sheer football luck?
Well, I can't speak to what they've done his entire career and then how much they completely changed it this past year. I mean, if this is a tenfold difference,
yeah, they were clear that they were not practicing him at all. That was clear.
Yeah, and
was that too late?
Yeah, could 100% it was too late.
Could they have extended his time with the Cowboys, or maybe got more games, or?
Well, perhaps if that was the secret sauce, then for the last half decade, if you could have been getting 13 games a year out of him just by not practicing him, then there's no question they should have been doing that the entire time. Yeah. But
I understand moving on. I wish they would have thought this sooner, that just not practicing was the right way to go.
But even then, there's still an occasion where you wake up and he's a Sunday scratch because
you're right.
He slept wrong last night.
But hey, they figured it out for 1 year.
Right.
They figured it out for 1 year.
And that's why I thought they would do it again, especially at this money level. I think it's going to be very difficult for your line to be as good as next year, but it's probably just consistent with my overall thesis that this is the Cowboys' version of a rebuild this year, Wolchuk.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that depending on how they end up lining up with their starting five, they could be a better run-blocking offensive line. Tyron Smith is one of the best pass blockers, but he wasn't getting a whole lot of movement in the run game last year if you're looking to kind of like nitpick a little bit, but I do think it's a move that just seems like it makes sense for both parties. Tyron's been taking low-cost deals his entire career with the Cowboys. Thank you for doing that. And they clearly weren't willing to pay, and it seems like maybe nobody else in the league was either, than what the Jets were. So I hope it works out for the best. I mean, the dude is a future Hall of Famer. He's been amazing. But, yeah, I would have made this move 2 years ago because of the reliability concerns. The thing is with the contingency plan is they proved, hey, we are not willing to move Tyler Smith from guard to tackle if indeed Tyron's not available. And if you had done that, maybe we would have felt differently because Bass was definitely a worthy replacement at guard. But I think it's best to move on and get a clean slate with both sides.
Man, I wonder how dirty that MRI has to be if that's all he can get. At 33 years old, there has to be some very medically verifiable reasons that you can't trust him because, coming off of 13 or 14 games and, not playing, or not practicing, I think there would be a demand, especially with the lack of offensive linemen.
No doubt.
But yes, the league is convinced he's not going to stay healthy, just as the Cowboys know and have experienced for themselves. How much of a need now is tackle and guard? Like, how would you rank those two, Brian? Do you think it's a screaming need, or is there depth like at least satisfactory compared to what other teams are throwing out there?
Well, like we talked about earlier, if I don't get an offensive tackle I like in the first round or so, I can always move Tyler Smith out there. That would be my plan. I think they need center more myself. I mean, you're asking me Hoffman, TJ Bass. No, I can't. I mean, I'm watching this draft, and I'm seeing like 5 or 6 guys that I think legitimately could help as centers. So I'm all about that. If to me, I know if I have to, I can move Tyler Smith. I know that, but like I said, I'm just kind of thinking center could be a bigger problem for me too.
Yeah, tackle is a much bigger need than guard because I think they've got a guy in TJ Bass who is a starting caliber player, in my opinion. The thing is, you mentioned it there. I think that center stretches more so than tackle does past the first round.
Yes,
personally. So I think I could circle back and get a center in around 2 or 3. I might need to take my tackle at 24 if there's one there that I like.
See, and that would, to me, that would be the wrong way to go about it because you can just, like, Tyler Smith should be your left tackle. You should get the best center you can possibly get instead of circling back and now, okay, we got a guy, we kind of like him. Get the best dang center you possibly can. Tyler Smith is already a solid left tackle. You drafted him to be Tyron Smith's replacement already.
I hear
and, like, I'm with you. TJ Bass as your left guard.
Yeah.
Like, give it a shot.
I don't think they knew how good that Tyler Smith could be as a guard.
That could be.
That's the problem.
And I'm with you 100%, but this is fair. It's a unique tackle draft where I think there are a lot of good guys, and if you get one of those dudes to slip to you at 24, he might be the best player on your board. And I'm not going to not take him because of Tyler Smith maybe playing tackle. You might be able to put yourself together with a really badass offensive line again. So I'm with you. I would have made that move too. But this year's draft just has me thinking a little bit differently. If there's one of those tackles there, I think I'm just going to say, screw it. Let's do this thing.
Yeah, I think that, you guys have framed it well. There's so many good options, and you can let the board decide which way you go. Yeah. I'm going to just be ready for a surprise because when they took Tyler Smith, and he is a hell of a player that we thought was a tackle, I guess for now a better guard, that came out of left field the morning of the draft. And I think it's important also to believe in this scouting department. If they throw something at you like a Micah Parsons or that Tyler Smith thing, their mistakes are very few and far between and almost non-existent when it comes to taking offensive linemen in the first round. Okay, what about Stefan Gilmore here? Considering what we know about how the Cowboys passed on this one and how cheap they were on the Zach Moss deal, do we need to just bury that discussion now? There's no way in hell they can afford this guy, right?
It depends on how far this thing goes again. If it turns into where he's got no options but except a veteran minimum type of a deal and he's comfortable here, which, when talking to him, he was, he felt like he was. I kind of felt like that he was due like a 1-year, $12 million deal. He ain't getting close to that. So it's going to be about it's going to come down to if you take the veteran deal, you want to take it here, you want to take it somewhere else.
And he just had surgery, right? And he should be hopefully back and ready to go by the time training camp rolls around. But teams might be a little bit, all right, we got to wait and see how that recovers. I do think he could be a guy that goes after the draft before he's even signed.
Yeah,
he might be a veteran that waits.
I think people were watching him on tape and they were seeing a guy that was slowing down a little bit too.
So maybe that market has dipped very significantly.
I think so.
I mean, that's what I see, but he is so crafty and nifty and physical and smart that he makes up for that lack of speed. But when I looked on tape, or when I was watching the games, I thought, man, if I need corner, I'm only thinking $4 or $5 million a year for this guy, right? But is that still too much for the Cowboys?
Well, the Cowboys, it might be too much because, you signed Jordan Lewis back, which I didn't think they were going to get Jordan back. So you got Jordan to play the nickel. Diggs, we'll see how the health of him, and then Bland playing on the outside.
Yeah, in their mind, that's their starting corners. That's their
starting corners, and this is a really deep draft, as Zach and I have been talking about. So and then they who knows what Eric Scott can do. I know that's a name I was going, who? Eric Scott?
Haven't they always use Jordan Lewis as like a piece of depth that they have in mind for roles? They're not going to seriously lock him in at slot, are they?
That's what he did last year.
Yeah.
He was your slot.
And that wasn't good enough, though. That was a backup plan after you had been hurt. That's not a going into the season plan.
Well, that's a going into the season plan, right? I mean, what would if you had to do it, if you brought Gilmore back, then that means Bland
I would have rather given that money and put it towards Gilmore, no disrespect to Jordan Lewis, than bringing back Lewis.
I think most people.
I mean, we were late in the season, and you had to have Stephon Gilmore go ahead and man up on DK Metcalf because he was kicking Deron Bland's ass. Stefan Gilmore can still play. I mean, I hear what you're saying in terms of him slowing down a little bit, but I think the craftiness in which he plays the position, he can still help you. And my goal would still be, like Eric and I have been talking about, I'd love to get Bland back inside if I could. If I had a choice, I'd kick him back inside and play the slot.
He's not a good player if he's not intercepting the ball. He's just average.
And Jordan Lewis finished the season really strong. He did. It's just consistency issues.
Yeah, I think if you go center in the first round, maybe you trade down a few spots to pick up an extra middle of the draft selection. You go center, you kick Tyler Smith out to left tackle. Now your offensive line is solidified. TJ Bass is your left guard, and you draft maybe one of these corners in round 2. Premium position. That wouldn't be a problem at all. And then you can kick Bland back into the nickel spot, and you have a young buck on the boundary that hopefully is as badass as Diggs and Bland have been for you.
Have you looked at the Michigan kid?
Love him.
The corner?
Sanders still?
Yeah, Sanders still.
Oh, man, that dude is a pest.
Yeah,
he
and you
physical as hell. I would draft him and start him
at nickel, right?
Yeah,
there you go. There are guys. There's guys when you start to talk about this draft. Melton's another one that I really like. There's some guys that can play slot only for you and probably be better than what you're playing with right now.
I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could fix this or address it. I think what Wolchuk said a couple of minutes ago, I wanted to get your thoughts on though, Brian. I would have rather spent the money on Gilmore than Lewis, right? And I agree with that. I don't know if you do, but if you're going to bring back Lewis, why wouldn't you bring back Gilmore? I could see letting Gilmore go and Tyron Smith go and Jordan Lewis go if you're saying, hey, we're kind of rebuilding here. But if you're doing that, why bring back Jordan Lewis? Did he finish that strong? Is his 8th year with the Cowboys now going to be so special that you just can't let him go? This is cap cut season, not hang on to guys that we've liked for nearly a decade.
Yeah, I just kind of feel like that Jordan Lewis, what this really might have come down to is Jordan Lewis was willing to make a deal.
Yeah, I imagine it was very little in the way of dollars.
I think it was like $1.5 million. I mean, it's a fully guaranteed salary, but it's under $2 million.
But he's making. He came with hat in hand and
went super cheap.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that makes sense then.
Yep.
Thank you, boys. Okay, finally here in the CNOTE, 5 free agents the Cowboys could still sign. Comes from our friends Blogging the Boys. Connor Williams, a player while in Dallas you could argue was playing out of position. He's still available here. That kind of makes sense.
I'm going to pass on
after
that
going to the Dolphins and figuring out how to play center. Biotish has gone to the Commanders. What do you think, Chief, as our AFC East insider?
He was a really good player last year for the Dolphins, but he's coming off the ACL injury. I saw Louis Riddick on ESPN, I think it was last week, alluding to this might be one of those nightmare surgery recovery situations. I don't know where he actually stands physically right now. And that's just based on seeing the way Louis Riddick on ESPN was talking about him. But I could see him, perhaps after the draft, you didn't come away with a center that you feel good about because you had to get your tackle. Maybe he's a guy that you start kicking some tires on. But I think you got to figure out what the health timeline is for a guy like that off the ACL.
I think the experience there of him playing center, playing guard is great. I just don't think, to me, I would rather go for a younger guy and try and find a way to get a Travis Frederick type of a player. I think there's some guys in this draft that play really well laterally, secure down linemen, second-level players. Give me a guy that's a young guy that I could kind of work with, that I feel like that's not banged up. And I'm going to go that route, I think, instead of going Connor Williams.
Instead of making things so difficult, it's just like, okay, do we need a center? Yes. Is this one of the best center classes we've seen in a long time? Okay.
Then it's
pretty easy, dude.